And we are live from the Heartland. Welcome to the Christian Whistleblower channel, also the home of the new Unindoctrinator podcast. Of course, I'm Jeffrey Daugherty. Always glad to have you here with us. Today, we've got a special guest that we've had on before, and we're pleased to have back on again. He is a symbologist. He's a rather prolific author. He's one of the more intelligent gentlemen that I've ever had the pleasure to talk with. He's also a comparative etymologist, and if you know what that is, you get bonus points. But most of all, we just call him our friend, our resident expert, and author of Holographic Culture. He's Pierre Sabak. Welcome back.
Hi, it's great to be on your show again. Thank you very much for inviting me, Jeffrey. So it's brilliant.
From your accent, I think you're probably from Alabama, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a very small town in Alabama. No one's ever heard of it before.
I bet. Pierre, tell us what a comparative etymologist is.
Right. Okay. It's the study of words from the Greek root etymos, which means truth. Now, the study of words is very important in terms of the deconstruction of symbolism, because symbols tend to work on polymorphic and polyglottal wordplays. And by this, there's a slight echo. Can you hear an echo? No,
I don't hear it.
All right. Okay. So essentially, polymorphic symbols. So, I'm sorry, I'm just doing an echo. Right.
Let me just check and make sure mine's square over here. Yeah, I think let's see. I'll change one thing here. Maybe we'll get rid of some of the echo. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's got rid of the echo, so that's
perfect.
Very good. Excellent. Try that again. Okay, so etymology is the study of words, etymos meaning truth, and etymology is very important in terms of deconstructing symbolism. So, for example, you can have polymorphic symbols, and this is a very common type of symbol. A common example would be, for example, sun. And sun, which means the astrological or solar body within the sky. So therefore, the Son of God can be represented as the Son of Light, and therefore the halo would have the connotation of a Son of Light. In the mystery religions, this would be the Akzori. The Akzori is a brother of light. Now, this in itself is a wordplay on Akzari, which is a brother of an angel. But again, this is polymorphic because a brother of an angel, the term Zar, which is the root of Akzari, basically means an alien. So the angel and alien are synonymous within the ancient tongues. So that's essentially the route into occult symbolism. But it's really important when we begin to break down the symbology, because within this there is a hidden language, which I refer to as a private discourse. And this private discourse alludes to the discipline called scaphology. Now, scaphology is the study of angelic boats. Scaph is the etymology of a boat, from scapto to dig. It's from the Greek root. And so scaphology is this restricted tradition about boats. Now, boats are very important within the religious and mythological symbolism because they allude to these angelic carriers, which are represented as circular. And these are known as the opening wheels within the Aramaic. So that's, if you like, some of the background in terms of the angelic sailor at a very basic level. And this is another key point which has been sort of misunderstood or not represented, and this is again because it's coming from this classified tradition, but the angels are not only represented as messengers and emissaries, but they are deemed to be sailors. So for example, there is this correlation between Malak an angel and Malak a sailor, and this feeds into the ufological tradition. I refer to this as new ufology, which is the study of occult symbolism within ufology, which is essentially scaphology, the study of these angelic ships or carriers.
I've got a quick question when you come to a stopping point that's a little silly, but really goes to a big root of much of the modern UFO lore.
Exactly. It's the basis of occult symbolism. Now, when you get into the more intellectual strands of ufology, there is this idea that ufology is just this modern 20th century construct. It's almost as though it's a part of the subconscious mind in terms of humanity is alienated from themselves, and so project the alien archetype on the other. So the aliens themselves are a better version of ourselves. And again, this idea that this is just that it's technology and that it's based upon ourselves projecting on another civilization. But I think when you begin to study scaphology, what you understand and what you realize is that the representation of an alien crew member, which are affiliated or associated with different star systems, is a very ancient idea. And it is this root of the mythology which is the impetus behind the modern representation of the ufological tradition, and also the sci-fi tradition as well. So this is important to understand.
Let me ask you this, and again, this seems like a silly question, and it sort of is, but it's also something that is kind of part and parcel of much of the modern UFO lore, and that is, Pierre, why do so many of these aliens seem to be so interested in probing our butts?
Yeah, okay, that's a really good question. There's a medical reason for this, and this is because if you put a probe into a person's anus and you put an electrical charge, that within a male will make a man ejaculate. So this is a reason why. And if you go into the ufological literature, as far as I know, there has never been a female which has been probed anally, and the reason.
Interesting.
Yes. So you have your answer, basically.
Very interesting. Now, you've written, and I think it's on the back of Holographic Culture, that holographic culture is an academic study, and it claims to be the first academic study of ancient aliens. And what makes holographic culture the first academic study of ancient aliens?
Okay. I think that's probably a slight exaggeration. I think there is one more academic study into ancient aliens, but this was written 25 years ago. Right. So I think it is fair to say that this really is the first academic study into ancient aliens for a long, long time, for a generation. The person who wrote an academic study on aliens was The Sirius Mystery by Robert Temple. This is a seminal work. Again, it's an academic book like my own work, and it's based upon etymology and on ancient mythology. It's a very erudite work, and it's academic, and so obviously there's quite a high entry point in terms of reading the book, but I do recommend it to all your readers. In fact, Temple is a professor, so yeah, it's an excellent work. Again, Professor Temple came to the same conclusion as myself, that sections of these beings, and we're talking about particularly beings which are important within occult symbolism, and this is because these entities, certainly within the religious and mythological tradition, are equated with the second creation, which is the planting of humanity upon the earth, which is panspermia within the Greek. But in particular, this would be directed panspermia. So this would be not the idea of bacteria bombarding the planet and therefore evolving. We're talking about directed panspermia from intelligent beings which are affiliated to Sirius. And this is why Sirius and the Pleiades and Orion keeps on, these are uniformal symbols which keep on reoccurring. I refer to this as polyglottal symbolism. This is wordplays which repeat throughout different languages.
And it's very interesting to me, especially in the United States. We don't tend to be quite as disciplined as some of the other cultures, but within the United States, the words that we use, the language that we speak, the language that we write, we do so without any care, most of us, very, very haphazardly, and we never stop to consider for a moment the incredible meaning and the incredible intention that is placed within words and language. Elaborate on that a little bit if you can, and speculate maybe as to why we've allowed ourselves to get to this place, and what you would recommend we do if we really want to get the full, deep, esoteric knowledge that comes within just the words really are things, thoughts really are things, and words mean things.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, that is. So, for example, if you wanted to take a very common word, the word office, as in an office worker, well, the word office in Greek means a serpent and is connected to the etymology of opus, which is work. So the office worker wears a tie, which is a symbol of the serpent. But again, similar types of word plays are also found within the Semitic as well. So these are polyglottal. These are word plays which are repeated in multiple languages. So, for example, Malak and angel is related to Maleka, which is work. And again, you've got the word play on the Latin ovid, which you've got comparisons between the I'm trying to think, but in the Latin also, there's a wordplay between serpent and worker. And so the serpent worker was essentially somebody who offered sacrifices to the serpent. So these wordplays, again, within the Messianic tradition, Sabar is a painter, is related to Sabaoth, which is the host. And this is certainly important when you're actually looking at iconography as well. So, for example, academics will tend to say when they're talking about statues, let's say a statue of Zeus or something like this, that it's an archetype or a personification. Yes, it is at one level, that this is a lesser meaning. The hidden level is that the statue is a double. And so therefore there is this connection between Eidolon, which is a phantom, and the double. And so the statue represents this double, and the double itself is very important when we look at the symbology of the angels. For example, the seraphim are said to be a non-human species of angel. They often appear with the cherubim, which are a human angel, which I describe as a proto-human species. But the seraphim are able to shapeshift according to the traditions of Enoch. And again, the seraphim are the same species as the jinn, a serpent or worm. So the idea of a double, the statue itself, so the relationship of the idol which was worshipped, which was understood to be a double, it's not literally a double, but they're representing this idea of a double, which is very, very important, which feeds into the idea that the angel itself is an artificer. The angel can take on different forms.
Pierre, do you subscribe to the belief that in most of those temples of worship, there was a practice going on called fumigation, where the congregant would go in, serve the statue, become into an altered state by the herbs and things that were burned. And many times they weren't just worshiping a statue, that statue actually in the worshiper's eyes would come to life and speak and converse with them.
Yes, and I think this would go into the shamanic traditions as well. So I think that there is obviously a connection with rites and with hallucinogens as well. But behind the symbology of the statue is this idea of a double, which relates to the spiritual realm and the imaginal realm and the realm of spirits. But again, when we're dealing with a holographic culture, I think that this in itself is very interesting, because a holographic culture, in the way that I've defined it, is that these are a physical set of beings, but that they're technological, but that they can manipulate the waveform. And this is why they were written about in paradoxical language. So, for example, the Elohim are described as an Elakeh, a high creature, but they can dematerialize as the Ruach Elohim, which are the high spirits. Right. The Ruach Elohim are essentially the jinn. But if you remember, the jinn themselves are described as a physical race. They have offspring, and again there's a connection between daemon and demos, which is people. The same wordplay is repeated in the Arabic and various different wordplays. So that's essentially would be the connection.
Pierre, would we be going too far when we talk about the worker as the serpent and the person wearing the tie, or workers for the serpent? Would it be too far to take it to say that we could potentially, like maybe the Matrix movie suggested, all be going to work in our ties, and we're just worker bees for the serpentine overlords?
Yes, well, to some extent that is correct. That's what it actually symbolizes. So, yeah, you're basically a servant. And again, in the etymologies as well, Adam and Kadim is a servant, Kadam, servant. So in the different Semitic dialects. So the Adamic man is described as a servant to the seraphim, which are the highest form of angels. Now, the seraphim and the Elohim are one and the same. And in order to understand this, you have to go back both into the etymologies and also into the mythological tradition. And I want to try and emphasize that, because obviously people sometimes become a little bit confused when we talk about the Elohim, because they say, oh, well, the Elohim made man in God's image. But when we break down the etymologies of Selem, which is God's image, the word actually means an idol. Now, the reason why
it literally means that. I can see it in the Strong's Concordance as you're speaking.
Yeah. Now, why is it an idol? Because we've been genetically engineered. We are a construct. We've been constructed. And so the symbology behind that is that we have been genetically engineered. Now, the Elohim themselves, there's a cognate between Elohim and Erin, a watcher or a shining one. Again, the terminology in the singular, is a watcher, or is light. But because within written Judaism, the vowels weren't pointed, the watcher was represented as the shining one or the shining eye. Again, it would go into the Egyptian mysteries of Horus and Seth. Now, the watchers are the shining ones. Again, the same wordplay is polyglottal. You find this within the Greek between theos, God, theros, watcher, and phos, which is light. So these wordplays are playing out. So the watchers are the shining ones. And again, the watchers are the high ones because they are described as the Elohim. Now, the high ones and the watchers are the shining ones are, when you begin to break it down, the seraphim, because there's this correlation between Sophepha, watcher in the Hebrew, Serapha, serpent, and Serapha, which is fire. So the watchers are the shining ones, which are the fiery ones. Now, fire is very important when we begin to look at astrotheological symbolism, because this goes into the symbolism of Sirius. So therefore, you've got Sira in Arabic is Sirius, but the etymology is coming from Sarah, which is a spark. So Sirius is the sparkling one or the scorching one. And this is because it refers to Serapha fire, which refers to the seraphim, because the seraphim are affiliated or identified with Sirius. And they were known as the Ben Sira, which is the son of a boat. So that in itself is interesting. And again, the jinn are born of fire, which is another signifier of Sirius.
Yeah, there's so much going on. And I mean, everything is, it's layers upon layers upon layers. And
it's extremely complex.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we can come to a place where we become more studious. But you talk a lot about a concealed power structure, and that's kind of what you're describing right now, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. There are layers within layers. I describe the priesthood as the Disciparati. The word disciple is coming from the Latin root to deceive, and this is because knowledge is layered.
Wait, can you repeat what you just said again about?
Yeah, the Disciparati are the deceit. So the word disciple is coming from the etymology to deceive.
To deceive.
Wow. Deceive. That is correct. Again, I think that you're dealing here with clayleptical symbolism. So that a clayleptical symbol is where you would switch the word around. So, for example, in Arabic, Ram is the word for lofty, which would obviously connote the Elohim, which are the, and again, there's this etymological connection between Ram and Am, which are people, but also there's a correlation there with Rame, which is to deceive. So the high people are connected to deceiving, and the deceivers are the Disciparati, which are the disciples. So you have layers of initiation, and these levels of initiation are always deceptive. So, for example, when you begin at the bottom of, let's say, the initiatory ladder, and again, we both started at the bottom because I came from a Christian background, and this is how I became very interested in this, and so did you yourself.
Right.
So there's a literal interpretation of the scriptures. And then from the literal interpretation, the next level is, no, actually it's astrotheological. The miracles are all astrotheological. And then you take it to the next level and actually, no, actually the gods really are real. And so this is really the level of initiatory knowledge. And this is based upon understanding, because you're standing under someone. And again, knowledge, because ledge is layered. The knowledge is always layered. And it's always compartmentalized as well. And
do you think it's built in that every time, like when you become a Christian, you think, oh, I have the literal word of God. This is truth. I believe it. This is where I stay.
Yeah,
will stay there. And then if you decide that you do want to grow more, you come to the point, where it's astrotheological. It's like there's built-in levels of faux enlightenment, so that it's very easy for you to just stay there.
Yes, I mean, that is correct. And again, it would be very easy once you get to the next level in terms of the astrotheological symbolism is to say, well, no, the opening wheels, for example, which are described as angelic carriers, it's all planetary symbolism. Yes, at one level, it's planetary symbolism, but at another level, they're representing angelic carriers, and they're representing them literally, because you're coming back a full circle. You're going from a literal belief to a metaphysical belief back to the literal belief, because what it's pointing or alluding to, and this is a signpost, is something which is real, which is tangible, something which is impinging upon our reality. And again, reality can be understood at multiple levels, just in the same way with Pythagoras' monochord. The monochord is this vibrating string with the quickest vibration at the top is the spirit realm. The slowest vibration is the physical realm. This is why we always talk about vibration, but it's actually going back to the classical school of Pythagoras. And it informs physics as well, string theory. So again, it's going back to occult knowledge.
Pierre, what is it within you? And if someone doesn't have it, do you have any suggestions for how they would cultivate it? What is it within you that drives you ever forward and ever upward, so to speak, not being satisfied with level, but always searching for the next level? Tracy said, what is it that keeps you moving?
I think it's creativity. I mean, to be honest, I studied fine art and I wanted to be an artist. And I spent the early part of my youth trying to make that dream become a reality. And it just never it never happened. You know, I had exhibitions and they never worked out. And I was a figurative painter, so I was always interested in neoclassicalism, academic painting. I was interested in drawing like Da Vinci, and again, my style of drawing is very much like Da Vinci. I always joke that I could have been quite a decent forger of Leonardo da Vinci if if I could get hold of some Renaissance paper. I'd probably.
There's a market for that, Pierre.
Sorry, what's that?
There's a market for that.
Yeah, I think that there is. So that was my interest. And again, I studied fine art and semiotics. Semiotics is the study of the sign, which when you break it down is the study of the symbol. And that obviously leads into systems of propaganda. So from that basis of studying that and being very interested in that, the next progression, and again, I was interested in politics, but gave up on politics in my early 20s because I realized that in order to study politics, you have to have occult knowledge and understand occult symbolism. And for me, I was much more interested in that aspect of occult symbolism. So, and again, I kind of saw things when I was younger, which I couldn't explain. And so that was another driving point for me. And when I was a child, I saw a rocket in a farmer's field, and that got me interested in UFOs. And again, I saw a ghost of my teacher as well. And so that kind of got me into the idea of spirits. And I think what's interesting is how the two actually intersect. And I think that this is certainly an important point within holographic culture, because basically the physical and the spiritual realm intersect, and the Pythagorean monochord, Pythagoras talks about this. Again, the entities, the Ruach Elohim, the high spirits can materialize as physical entities. I argue that this is based upon technology, that they've deconstructed the waveform. Now, what's important about this is that when you deconstruct time and space, an extension of that is that then you begin to deconstruct the spiritual realm. The spiritual realm is the imaginal realm of ideas. It's what Plato was talking about in terms of universal forms. This is the implicit orders, the implicated order, but the imaginal realm, which is the spiritual realm, is expressed physically in the physical realm. This is why when people have near-death experiences, their, shall we say, visions are very, very much like hallucinations. Now, the critic will say, well, this is because it's the dying brain and it's hormonal. But when you look at studies such as Professor Ring, who studied blind people who also see, and these are people who've never seen before, and so physically they're incapable of even knowing what sight is, you realize that near-death experience is real. And the reason why it's hallucinogenic...
Correlation, I've never heard that before, posited before.
Yeah, so the reason why it's hallucinogenic is because you're entering into the imaginal realm. And again, that this is certainly important in terms of one's, shall we say, spiritual level of where you are. Because if you believe that you're going to hell and you're entering into the imaginal realm, then that's going to have connotations for you. And it might take you aeons to get out of, So this is what they're doing.
Wow.
And the symbol is part of this. Part of the symbol is a talisman in terms of remembering one's past life, but it also feeds into the imaginal realm because the idea itself has power. The concept becomes the conception. The word is the world, and this is how we are controlled through language, which is the artifact. The artifact is this alien code within human languages. So,
and you've written that, in your opinion, that really this holographic culture, it
Mm.
kind of makes up the basis of all religion and philosophical tradition. Is that overstated or is that accurate?
No, it's not. I think that's probably understated.
Understated. Wow.
Well, I describe them as the saucer cults, and the saucer cults are really the proto religions. And the reason why I call them the saucer,
Flying saucer, right?
as in flying saucer, they worship these vessels. And if anyone's in any doubt about the fact that they worship these vessels, then I need to really dispel that with the audience. So, for example, when we're dealing with the word worship, ship is used to denote the veneration of an angelic vessel. Again, religion is religare, to more a vessel. And again, when you look at the Roman priestess, she carries a votive dish. It's like a circle, and inside there is often like what is either a tooth or a circle. Now, this represents a wheel, and the wheel is an opening wheel, which is an idiomatic term to describe a flying saucer. This is a spinning wheel. So the votive dishes we use to represent these angelic carriers. Not only this, but hieroglyphically, the votive dish is read as Sirius. So Sirius is a wheel, and this is because the opening wheels, which are these angelic carriers, are equated with angels who were described as sailors. Malach, an angel, Malach, a sailor. And so, yes, essentially religion is pointing to these saucer cults.
And it's fascinating to me that you bring up Rome, because I recently have been doing some shows with Joseph Atwell, who wrote Caesar's Messiah, and I'm a student of the New Testament. And I discovered in the New Testament a very curious, to me at the time, development that all of the great events of the life of the man that is called Jesus in the New Testament were surrounded by UFO, ET, alien imagery. And then I find out that Rome probably wrote the New Testament, and I thought, why? And as I looked in, you can't read Roman religious, you can't read any type of Roman literature without coming to by the end of the second chapter, coming to the conclusion that Roman literature is absolutely jammed with UFO, alien, ET imagery. UFO saucers are ubiquitous within Roman culture.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for example, the Romans would worship trees, but trees are important because, again, they're considered to be circular, and there are these hollow vessels which equate with boat symbolism. This is part of the scatological tradition, which is hidden or concealed. And I think that this is really important because whether it's the Roman mysteries or whether it's modern day Catholicism, when the celebrant is worshipping, they only have access to the first level of knowledge. So they believe what they're being told in terms of the mythology to be true in terms of the myth. But the tree is a signifier of a hollow vessel. And again, so these ideas of talking trees and talking bushes, again, when we go back into the opening wheels were often described as seed receptacles or barrels. So, for example, the Aramaic word for ophan, which is a wheel, which was used to describe a flying saucer, is related to pana, which is to turn. Now, this is important when we're dealing certainly within the traditions of Exodus, for example, because Moses talks to God. And the etymology for speaking face to face with God is panim. Now, panim is coming from pana, to turn, which is the same root used to denote ophan, which is a wheel, which is a turning wheel, which was used to describe these angelic carriers. These same wheels which were used within the votive plate, which was used also to describe Sirius, and was also used in terms of worship. And again, when we look at the polyglottal symbolism of worship, in English worship, but you've got Sabah in Arabic, to worship or to praise, is related to Sabaoth, which is the angelic host. So they were venerating or literally worshipping the host. And this is found within the church as well, because you've got navis, which is a boat, which is related to the nave. But again, when you actually look at the etymology of navis and nave, there's a close cognate with nephos, which is a cloud, and nephil, which are a giant, the Nephilim. So again, the boat signifier is going into the denomination of the Nephilim, Nephilia, which is Orion. They were described as the Gibborim. Again, Gibbar is Orion in Arabic and in the Semitic languages. So again, it's all astrotheological, but importantly, these vessels were venerated and were worshipped, and it's encoded within. So, for example, with Sybil, she will carry often a large circular symbol. and the large circular symbol is used to denote, it has this connotation of the votive dish. And again, with the Greek statues as well, with I'm trying to remember but anyway, with Athena, she sometimes carries a shield. So you've got this etymology, and behind the shield is a serpent. So this is denoting the seraphic host. And again, it's working on the Semitic word plays. So again, it's always one step removed. So it's
I didn't know that here till I went to, there's a replica of the goddess Athena, this great big huge golden goddess in Nashville, Tennessee, of all places, and she's got the shield, and behind the shield there's this serpent, and you don't even notice till you go behind and you look, and it's like, wow.
Yeah, it's all there. Well, we'll get into the symbolism of the shield, but basically,
here, but this is a good. I don't want to forget this. You know, I'm a Star Trek guy. Star Trek's filled with a lot of symbology, a lot of occult symbology. But the one thing that keeps screaming out to me is the words of Captain James T. Kirk. He says, "What does God need with a starship?"
Exactly. What does God need with a starship? But the gods were represented with the starship, and we need to really be mindful and cognizant of this when we're actually discussing religion, and certainly mythology as well, because why any serious student of mythology, of religion, have not heard of scaphology? Why is that? When in order to understand the angelic messenger, the emissary, you have to understand the angelic sailor. And it's not there within mythology. And this is because it's been codified, it's been hidden, it's based on the classical tradition, classis is a naval fleet, and it's classified. And again, it's all based upon class distinction as well. One who is born of a boat is naval, is from the naval tradition. Malak an angel, Malak a sailor. As we said before, the naval tradition has a connotation of Nephil, which is a giant. And again, these were the mixed bloods. So, for example, in the Greek and in the Phoenician, you've got in the Hebrew, you've got Anak, which is a giant, the sons of Anak. But again, in the Phoenician language, Anax is a prince, because the bloodline of the prince is identified with the dragon. In Arabic, this would be Sultan, Tanim, which is a dragon, or Tan, which is a crocodile, Saluta, which is to be exalted. Again, the Sultan would have a connotation of this dragon lineage. Same within Arabic as well. You've got Akim, which is related to Akan, which is a seraph. Again, this Sarif as well, a noble or a lord, is connected to seraph. So these are all important signifiers. The archangels as well. The archons, again, are related to Dracon, and Archon and Akan is the seraph. So understanding this is important. But going back to the shield of Athena, you've got the etymology of the serpent. So the serpent represents the jinn, Old Semitic jinn, which is a serpent or a worm. Now, the etymology of jinn comes from jana, to hide or to conceal. And this is because the serpent is hidden behind a shield. But in the Aramaic, the etymology of shield is junna, so which is a shield.
Well hidden too, very subtle. Crafty.
Now the shield is important within Greek symbolism, because the shield in warfare was used to denote a missile. So they would put these shields on catapults, and they'd fill them with hot sand and excrement and fling them at the enemy. And these would be giant shields right then, which could set boats alight, which could destroy fortifications. And so the flying host is the spinning shield, and this is interconnected with the boat signifier, which is a vessel. And again, it's also interconnected with a spinning wheel, which can be represented as a chariot. And so therefore you'll see the combination of the chariot with the wheel combined with the serpent. And certainly when you look at the etymologies of the Lord of the Host, Yahweh Sabaoth, Sabar is an army, but is related to Sevet, which is a crew member of a vessel, because this is a naval host. But again, you're seeing that there's also a connection with Sefer, which is a viper, which are essentially the seraph. So the Yahweh Sabaoth, the Lord of the host, is really the Lord of the seraphic host, which is typically represented as a throne chariot combined with the wheel.
Pierre, in AD 70, when Titus destroyed Jerusalem, Jewish writers, Roman writers, even Islamic writers wrote that during that battle, there could be seen in the heavens flaming chariots and flaming saucers of fire. Were writing that because they were trying to make sense of what they saw, or were the hidden priesthood, whoever, manifesting things in the sky consistent with what they were expecting to see, or were they all just on something that was a hell of a drug?
No. I think when you look at the historical evidence, it does seem very clear that these entities sometimes do intervene within human history. I know that certainly we're told, sort of like within sort of occult symbolism in the New Age, that they have the prime directive and they don't intervene. Right. I don't really see any evidence of that. They have totally intervened because they've intercepted human language, so they're a part of the artifact. The artifact is this code within language which controls how we think. They've incepted our religion. They're a part of our government. Gubernatio is to steer a vessel or a boat, which is the ship of state. The ship of state refers to these angelic Marines. We've got admiralty law. So essentially, they are everywhere. They're within the symbolism. And remember, we have had disclosure for thousands of years, but we need to emphasize here that this has been partial disclosure. It's been disclosure to the adepts. And these vessels were hidden underneath temple precincts. So this is something which we need to be mindful of.
Are these the people that you would call the hidden priesthood? Or
is that
entities, or is that both?
Sorry, could you just repeat the last part of the question? You were breaking up.
You use the term the hidden priesthood. Is that entity, people, or both?
Right. I think that's a really, really good question. In order to deconstruct that question, we need to look at the Illuminati and who the Illuminati are.
Okay.
So the terminology Illuminati is really coming from the Semitic root Akzari, which is a brother of light. But in the Arabic, the Akzari was used as a code word for the Aramaic wordplay, which is a paranomasia on Akzari, a brother of an angel. But as I said, the terminology Zar, an angel, is polymorphic of an alien, or a visitor. So they're one and the same thing. Again, in the modern Hebrew, Khazar is a space alien. K would be the Elakeh, who are a high creature, which can be understood as an extraterrestrial biological entity. And Zar, again, would be an alien. And again, is linked into words such as Muzar, which is strange within the Hebrew, because many of these entities were considered to be strange. But going back to the Illuminati, the brothers of light, who can be understood as the brothers of Sirius, the Ben Sirius, son of a boat. Hebrew word Sirah, boat, is a diptych paranomasia. It's a wordplay which works on the Arabic word Sirah, which is Sirius. So the brothers of light can be understood to be the brothers of Sirius. Now, they are split. So you've got the Illuminati are split into three sections, the three orders of the Illuminati. I refer to them as the Tripartite Illuminati. So you've got the human element. The human element is Ishman, Esh, fire. You've got the seraphic or non-human element, Seraph, which is a serpent, Serapha, which is fire. Then you've got the grafted element, the neophyte, Neophytus, which is the newly planted, foot on a plant, phot, which is a light. So again, the grafted element are also part of the Illuminati. And again, the grafted element is important when we look at family trees, because tree symbolism is all about the grafting of different bloodlines, as is the symbol of the vine as well. So you find within Illuminati symbolism, the vine is a very important symbol because it's easily grafted, as is the rose. The rose is another plant which is easily grafted, so is used to denote
symbology as well.
Sorry, what's that?
And all of that is Christ-centric symbology as well.
Exactly, yes. So you've got the rose. And again, when you actually look at the heart as well, this is an interesting one. So typically within Catholicism, you'll have Jesus represented with the heart. Now, the heart symbol is very important because in the Hebrew, you've got Lev, which is heart, which is related to Lavi, which is a lion. We would say lion heart. Now, the Levite priesthood represented themselves with the heart because it's a special type of symbolism. It's known as claylepticism. So basically, they take the Hebrew word Lev, which is a heart, and they switch it with the Arabic word, which is albanat. It can also, depending on the dialect, be pronounced as kalb. Now, kalb is a dog. So al-kalb is the dog star. So the heart is used to represent the dog star. And again, it's because there's etymological relationships between the etymology of hab, which is to love. Abba is the Aramaic word for daddy. It's the informal use of the word father, so daddy. But again, there is this connotation that the Father, which is identified with Al-Kalb, the dog star, planted life on the earth. And this was known as the second creation and was very distinct from the first creation, because the first creation is the creation of the universe from the divine mind, which is the absolute or the ultimate.
Before we get too far past that point, if you look at the Sacred Heart depicted in the Jesus character, usually it doesn't take a lot of imagination to see it as a circular craft beaming out light.
Yes, I mean, that's interesting as well. And again, when you look at the
it's in my logo. I just thought maybe we could see it real quickly, but it's not going to be easy. Please keep.
Yeah, when you look at the cardinals as well, so cardia means heart, so they're tracing their lineage back to the Levite priesthood. The Levite priesthood represented themselves with the lion. The lion is connected to Orion. So again, although the priesthood itself is a human element, it's one which is grafted, and this goes back into noble families. So a noble family is typically described as a scion. Now, a scion is polymorphic because it also means a plant which can be easily grafted. And so these human elements were particular bloodlines which were considered to be easily grafted with this angelic lineage. This angelic lineage was known as lordship, those who were born of a boat. And again, the boat signifier was often represented with the shield. So in order to denote lordship, you would have a shield. And in the Roman mysteries, sometimes consoles are shown with their carvings, and they'll have your face coming out of a shield. And so that's used to denote a descendant of a boat, which is, we would say, lordship. And these word plays are found repeated, as in Malak an angel, Malak a sailor, Melech a king. We would say kingship. But again, you've got the serif, which is connected to seraph, and Safina, which is a boat, again, lordship. Archon is connected to Olkas, which is a vessel, again, lordship. These are all born of boats. And so this is going back to what I describe as a scaphology, the study of ships within the religious and mythological tradition, which goes back to the proto-monotheistic religions, which were essentially the saucer cults, the veneration of these vessels, religion, relegate more a vessel.
So we would be talking about Zoroastrianism, Judaism.
Yeah, Zoroastrianism again is linked into fire, which is equated with the seraphim. And I think that this in itself is very interesting when you look at the priesthood. And again, it's found also within the philosophical tradition as well, the Pythagorean and Euclidean tradition, which is essentially this demarcation between the humanist tradition and the Pythagorean tradition, Puthos Agora, the speaker of the serpent. Again, Agora, which is can be understood also to be a marketplace, because they would speak within the markets, and it's a type of coin as well. And the coin is important as I describe this as a cytological symbol. It actually links into what I describe as numismatology. I never can pronounce the word, but it's essentially the study of coins. And the study of coins.
That is the first time I've ever seen you have anything remotely resembling trouble pronouncing a word.
Yeah, some of the words are quite big, but essentially the coin links into the symbols of redemption. But the coin is a symbol of the opening wheel, and this is why the coin is typically shown as being serrated, because the opening wheels, according to the priesthood, and again, you're finding this within the anecdotal evidence also within Frank Scully's book in the 1950s, which was the first hardback book on ufology. I think it was the second one written on ufology. He said that these vessels were constructed from a series of wheels. And again, this is why in the Aramaic, the word ophanim is in the plural, because they were constructed from a series of wheels, a series of cogs, and therefore the coin is represented as a cog to denote these wheels. And again, if you look within Christian iconography also, you get the weighing scale, such as the weighing of sin, which is connected to redemption, which is to buy back. But these weighing scales are used as a cytological symbol of the opening wheels. They look like flying saucers. And so they are vessels which are equated with a boat. And whether it's in Greek, within the Semitic and Roman language, as in English, the word vessel in English is polymorphic. It can be a type of a container, or it can be used to denote a boat, as we find in, for example, the symbol of a ship within a vessel.
The Spirit, we're told. And we as people are even told we're vessels of the Holy Spirit.
Yes, and that in itself is.
Let me drop a bomb on you, Pierre. You probably know this, but if I'm sure you know it, but it's kind of a little esoteric Christian eschatological thing. But if you go into the Greek New Testament and you study what is the mark of the beast, literally, the mark of the beast means an impress on a coin.
Yes.
That surprise you?
It doesn't surprise me, because in terms of the symbolism of the coin, in the ancient world, the way in which they represented the opening wheels was as different coins or different weights. And these different weights were identified with different types of vessels, which were also associated with different star systems. And so in early Greece, for example, they would use arrows as a type of monetary system. Now, the arrow itself is also closely concordant with the missile, because remember that the arrow is a type of missile, as is the flying saucer. So the arrow and shield often appear in symbolism together. Again,
like a rocket.
Exactly, because the arrow, when you fly an arrow, it spins, it turns, and it's a type of missile, as was the shields. So they're closely concordant within symbology. Now, the terminology.
You're taking divinity in your hands if you're a good marksman with the arrow.
Exactly. But what's quite interesting is also in terms of the missionaries as well, because the word missionary is related to emissary, which is a type of angel, but also to a missile. And the missile were these flying shields, which were adorned on boats and which was used to denote boat signifiers. And so, for example, certainly within Greek symbolism, if you look at mythology, you see that there's a connection with the harpy, which goes back to the Greek word arpue, which is an abductor, erpaton, a reptile. But you've also got opelon, a shield, pleon, which is a boat, because opelon, a shield, is closely concordant with a boat. It represents an angelic vessel or a boat. And opelite, which is a soldier, which can be understood to be the angelic host. So again,
carrying it through, you've got the missionary position.
Yeah, exactly. And again,
impregnation, abduction.
Yeah, which again, to ejaculate is to throw a spear. But again, the connotation there is of panspermia and of impregnation. And this is why the wheels were also symbolized as seed baskets. So, for example, the woven basket works at many different levels. So, for example, within the Babylonian symbolism of the angel, Nissa, an angel, it's related to the wordplay for a basket, in particular to pull up. So the basket is pulled up, and that's the signifier of a vessel. But the baskets are also woven because they're denoting a woven bloodline. And this is certainly found within English in terms of the birth canal, the canal as this scatological symbolism. Birth into, birthing a mooring a vessel is to birth a vessel. So there are these boat signifiers connected.
Pierre, you've obviously have years and years and years and years of study in this, and it takes hours and hours and hours to be able to get your head and your mind wrapped around it. What kind of advice or encouragement can you give to the people that watch this and say, I really want to know this, I really want to understand this, I really want to get my mind around it, but it just seems so damn intimidating. It seems like there's no way that we could ever understand, because you can't even say hello without realizing there's 17 different layers of hello.
Yeah.
What do we do here? Help us out.
I think you need to be aware of words, and you need to be aware of the etymology of words. And as I said before, this is the entry point into symbolism. It's not the only entry point, because obviously you've got astrotheological symbolism, which goes into numerological symbolism. And numerological symbolism is interconnected with linguistic symbolism. So, for example, in Hebrew, there's a connection between seraph, which is a serpent, Sappher, which is language, Sefer, which is a book, because the serpents wrote books. Okay, these are the seraphim, these are the angels. Same within the Arabic also. Taban, a snake, is related to tab, which is an addition of a book. Tabi is a follower or a partisan. So the partisan of the serpent would be a Taliba, which is a student of the Taliban. The Taliban are affiliated to the snake. And again, it's as I said, the priesthood is split between the humanist element and the seraphic element. And when the priesthood fall out, it's usually between the seraphic and the humanist element. They don't always see eye to eye. So this is part of an occult history. It's something which is hidden. Occult, coming from the root to hide, also has this connotation of ocular, which is the eye. In the Old Greek, drakos, an eye, is used to denote drakon, because the word drakon is coming from to look or to flash. Again, there is this connotation with Erin, the Watchers, or the Shining Ones, related to the Elohim. As we said earlier, Theos, God, is related to Theoros, the Watcher, Phos, which is light. All of these signifiers are of the Seraphim, Serapha, which is fire, which goes back to Sirius.
Wow. Pierre, I've got so much going on in my mind that I could ask you, so many questions pouring in from the chat room. We've got a little less than 10 minutes. What do you think would be the most important and profitable subject to tackle for these next 9.5 minutes?
Are people writing questions at the moment, or
they're just a lot of them? I've questions of like, where are they from, and what do they want?
Okay, yeah, we can answer that very, very quickly, but I'll have to keep it very simple. Essentially, the non-human angels go back to Sirius. You've got the humanity, the Adamic man is created in Orion. So the foot of Orion is where man was created, but the Nephilim was created in the hand of Orion, which is the hidden hand, which is this grafted bloodline. And then you've got the Pleiades, which goes back to the proto-human or the cherubim angels. So essentially, that's where they're from. But they record the chimera or the goat. So you've got the lion, which is Orion. You've got the goat's body, which is the Pleiades. And then you've got the tail of the lion, which is a serpent. Typically on the sculptures, also the serpent has canine features, again symbolic of the dog star. Now, the chimera, when you
put the dog is man's best friend, Pierre.
Best friend, exactly. And when you put all of this together, these are the Tripartite Illuminati, the three orders of the Illuminati, which is human, non-human, and grafted. Again, two pillars of Freemasonry, but the connotation is that there's a third pillar. This is the synthesis. The
synthesis comes from the two, right?
Yes, of course. It's got to be the synthesis, the thesis, the antithesis, and the synthesis, the grafting together of bloodlines, which is the work. The work of the work of ages is the work of angels, essentially.
Pierre, is there any chance that someone's sitting there saying, yes, I see it's engrafted into language. Yes, I see that language is the artifact. Yes, I see that there are these beings. And yes, I see that there is this hierarchy and all of these layers. Is it possible for the person that doesn't believe in space and aliens and other planets, is it possible that all of these beings could be from right here beneath oceans, beneath the land, from land we don't know about, or do they necessarily have to be extraterrestrial?
That's a good question. I don't dismiss the possibilities that there are entities living in the earth, whether they're alien or otherwise. I think what's important is that when you look at the mythological and religious symbolism, you can trace the source of cults back, and you can trace them back to astrotheological symbolism, which is pertaining to these entities which come from specific star systems. In the same way that we talk about, oh, the grey aliens come from this star system or that star system, they were saying the same thing. They were using weights as denominations to describe these vessels. These vessels were also described. So, for example, the Ophanim wheels. The Ophanim wheels were often described as barrels. Now, a barrel is a heavy wheel, because the etymology in Hebrew, you've got kabod, which is translated in the Bible as glory, typically like the glory of the Lord. It would be kabod, coming from the etymology of kavod, which is heavy. Now, I translate the word heavy as force. Really, this is understood to be the host. Okay, it's a heavy force because they are the angelic host. Now, the word kavod, heavy, which really is used to describe the angelic host, is a heavy force, is related to kavit, which is a barrel, kovel, which is a sailor. Again, going back to the angelic sailors, kaba, which is an emissary, which is the old word which was used for an angel. Again, this appears in more obscure language and within the Apocrypha. And again, Kaba goes back to Keba, serpent, and Al-Kalb, which is the dog star.
Just pieces of my Bible college are flying at me. And as I remember the word Ichabod,
Okay, yeah.
Ichabod. Ichabod means that the heavy, powerful anointing that rested between the cherubim on the Ark of the Covenant has departed. So you're so right. It's Kabod is the heaviest, most powerful of
which is it's a force. The best way of describing it would be a force. You see, sometimes when translators try to translate, they translate things literally, but it's a type of force. But remember, the Ark of the Covenant. Ark is a vessel, but it's also a boat within the Hebrew. Teva is both a large boat or a vessel. Okay, it's polymorphic, which connects to Sabaoth, which is the Lord of the host. So, and the cherubim are these proto-human angels, and they typically are combined with seraphic imagery, which would be the synthesis, and again is showing this dialectic. And the dialectic is at the basis of the classical and the religious tradition.
Pierre Sabak, if people want to get a hold of your material and learn more about your work, where do they go?
Pierre Sabak books. So you can't get my books anywhere else. They're just on my website, and I do that because I'm basically trying to write full time, and I do need to sell my books in order to try continue with this line of research. So that's the reason why, basically.
Yeah. And Pierre, you mentioned earlier in the program that your goal, your desire in your younger years was to be a fine artist.
Yeah.
And I've read 2 of your books, and I have to say, without trying to blow any steam up your skirts, those books are fine art, and you have realized your dreams, just maybe in a different way than what you originally thought they might be realized.
I think I'm very persistent. I mean, I illustrated the books myself, and I think you're right. Yes, I'm very happy with the work that I've done. I feel a sense of ownership. I feel proud about the work that I've done. But again, it hasn't been easy. You know, The Murder of Reality took me 7 years to piece together, and the second book, Holographic Culture, took 8 years to put together. I mean, you have to understand that scaphology is a non-subject. It doesn't exist. It's been hidden within the term yourself? Yes, that's right. I came up with the term myself, as I did with cytology. The thing is when we're... Hi there. Yeah, so for example, when we're dealing with symbolism, and I quickly became conversant with this when I started to study this at depth, we don't have the English words to describe the type of symbols that are occurring. So in order to empower ourselves, we need to give ourselves a new vocabulary. And so I've developed new vocabulary in order to describe what is occurring within the symbolism.
Again, statement.
Yeah, that's right. So I describe this as Illuminautics, the study of the signs of the Illuminati, from semiotics, which is the study of signs. So we need to empower ourselves through language, and this is what I'm trying to do.
Would you go so far, if you could, as to create a whole new language to completely opt out of the artifact?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I've sometimes thought to myself, what would the human language be like if it hadn't been messed with? We see certainly within mythology, the Tower of Babel is the beginning of the messing, is the creation of the artifact. I think the structuring of human language would be different, because human language as it is, and this is what I argue. I mean, there are 2 arguments. We can say, okay, with polyglottal symbolism shows a universal grammar. The universal grammar is these type of parallel thought formations, and these parallel thought formations are as a result of how the human brain ticks. It's basically the human mind. It's biological, if you like. And I think that in itself is a decent explanation. But I go one step further. I actually say that the artifact is external, and that there's a high degree of artificiality within human language. These polyglottal wordplays show that the artifact is external, and it's coming from the veneration of these entities which have claimed to be gods, and the Gnostics argued that these gods were were imposter gods. That essentially they put themselves above creation. But when we begin to break it down, these imposter gods were part of the anthropos. The anthropos is literally, it means human being, but it was used in a more generic sense also to refer to non-human entities which were sentient, like a human being. We would say a humanoid because they are sentient. So they were part of the anthropos, like humanity. The Elohim were part of the anthropos, but they elevated themselves falsely in order to control humanity.
Can we look forward to another book from Pierre Sabak?
Yeah, I'm writing about fairies at the moment because
That sounds fascinating.
Yeah, well, what I noticed is when I started looking into angels, obviously there's the symbology between the angel and the fairy is very closely matched.
Oh, yeah.
So, and what's very interesting is that the fairy is part of the scatological tradition. And so what we're seeing with the fairies, the same as what we're seeing with the angel, there's an interference in terms of the symbolism. The symbolism has been messed with, and it's carefully contrived by the priestcraft. Again, craft is in a boat or a vessel. So it's contrived, and it's going back to scatological symbolism. So I'm going to demonstrate and prove not only within the angelic tradition that you're seeing these scatological motifs, but it's also prevalent within folklore. So that's the next project which I'm working on. So yeah.
Amazing stuff here. Thanks so much for being with us again. I mean,
Thank you.
I could literally sit here and talk to you for hours. I think everybody would stay, but we all have to get some stuff done. Pierre Sabak books.
Thank you. Yep.
I encourage you, I would implore you, if I could, I would make it required reading for you to go and get Pierre Sabak. Go to Pierre Sabak books, get these 2 books. They will definitely change your life, and they are part of you unindoctrinating yourself. That's my firm conviction. For Tracy Dyer and the great moderators in the channel, for the lovely Cynthia, and for my great guest, Pierre Sabak, I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian Whistleblower. I salute you for being here, seeking after truth. And today's a great day to unindoctrinate yourself. Here, thanks again, my friend, for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me on your show again. It's been wonderful to talk to you. Thank you. And very profound. You're a very learned man, so thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. I'll send you the $50 as soon as we hang up. Pierre Sabak books, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you again real soon.
Thank you.